Okay, good morning, everybody. So, I am Sary AWAD. I am professor at IMT Atlantique and the coordinator of European project Cocpit that I'll be presenting in few moments. So first, I want to welcome you to this session that I will be moderating. And I'll start with a small overview about the subject. Then I'll present the Cocpit project, and then I'll let the floor to our speakers. Okay, so as you know, for the to respond to the climate change worldwide. All countries have activated and have set targets to reduce the carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions in general. In Europe here, we had set the Green Deal with a net zero emission by 2050 and an intermediate target of 55% of reduction on strategic sectors by 2030. So the transportation sector has also its own objectives. We can cite the 90% reduction by 2050 and the electrification of the transportation sector by 2035. Among the different transportations, we have the aviation and the shipping sectors that are the most difficult to abate their emissions. Because they are very difficult to electrify for the moment due to energy density issues. Okay, each of so the sum of emissions of these two sectors is around 5% of carbon dioxide emissions. Maybe it does not seem a lot, but each of these sectors we can situate its emission between the emissions of Germany and the emissions of Japan, two very industrialized countries that are among the top 5 CO2 emitters in the world. So to do so, the International Marine Organization has set a target of reducing by 50% the greenhouse gas emissions in 2050 with respect to 2008. And then the European Parliament, in the framework of the Green Deal, has set more ambitious targets to reducing by 80% the carbon intensity of shipping activity. And concerning the aviation sector, these targets are more in terms of the use of sustainable aviation fuels, where we have to reach 70% of sustainable aviation fuels on the energy mix of aviation. And already with the International Civil Aviation Organization, we have already started with a target that started in 2020 with a net zero growth of CO2 emissions of aviation sector. So the alternative fuels constitute one of the most solid pillars for the decarbonation of shipping and aviation sectors, as we can see. So if we talk about SAF, so in 2019, we have started to see the first flights that are using SAF. At this moment in Europe, the SAF represented 0.05% of fuel used. The production of SAF has accelerated, and in 2023, the share all around the world is around 0.16% of sustainable aviation fuels. For the moment, we have 8 certified sustainable aviation fuel pathways certified by the ASTM. The last one was certified this summer. And we have a maximal mixing rate of 50%. We have also 3 certified co-processing pathways with fossil fuels, and they are limited to 5% in blends. So in 2050, we have a long way to run in order to reach net zero emission worldwide, according to IATA and IATA commitments. We have to, in Europe, we have to introduce 70% of sustainable aviation fuels in our mix, which means that we have also to increase the integration part and the blending part to reach 100% of blends. And we have a specific target on e-fuels that should cover half of the targets in SAF in 2050. So to reach these targets, I have tried to list here the most important challenges that we have to face. So first, increasing the potential and the incorporation level, so the potential of different feedstock. For the moment, we have only the HEF pathway that is being produced at industrial scale, but we are limited with the lipid feedstock. Then we have the 7 other pathways that are dealing with different kinds of feedstock, including lignocellulosic and waste. And we have also the biogenic carbon dioxide, hydrogen from renewable electricity production. So we have to deal with all of these challenges in order to increase the feedstock. Then according to the Refuel EU Aviation, we have to build around 110 new plants in Europe. And we have also to increase the SAF part in the blends to reach 100%. There are some companies who are working on that. Rolls-Royce, I think they have already engines who will deal with that, and Airbus is targeting 2030 for this application. There's an important challenge related to de-risking the investment, so we should have clear and stable policies, and we have to have also decision tools that will help to choose the best pathway when we have for a certain scenario or feedstock, we have different pathways to choose between. We should have some decision tools to help to choose the best solution. Then we have to reduce the cost and the carbon footprint. So we can count on the economy of scale, but we can also count on the chain circularity, including the biorefinery concept, using also the carbon sinks to reduce the carbon footprint. For example, by co-producing biochar with the processes, among other applications. We have also to bring new materials and catalysts, and to go also further and further with low-cost renewable electricity, which is the case with increasing the renewable share in the worldwide. So this will be the plan of our presentation, of our session this morning. So we will have speakers that are covering a wide spectrum of the SAF chain. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much that you are here. I am very happy to be here with you. I would like to thank the BIS team, for organizing this event. So I am Argyro KALEA. I am a project development consultant at RAMBOLL for biofuels and Bio2X technology. And my presentation today focuses on sustainable aviation fuels and how RAMBOLL can support projects in order to obtain greener skies as soon as possible. So the agenda for today, I will say some words about RAMBOLL, who we are, what we do, following with SAF trends and production routes, some of our references and takeaways. So RAMBOLL is a global independent architecture, engineering, and consultancy company founded in Denmark in 1945. It consists of more than 18,000 employees that are dispersed in 35 countries. RAMBOLL undertakes projects worldwide with a strong presence in the Nordics, the UK, continental Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific, and can provide sustainable solutions within 7 markets, which are the energy, and the one that I will mainly speak about today, but also buildings, transport, environment and health, water, architecture and landscape, and management consulting. At RAMBOLL Energy, our aim is to support our clients' strategy plans and projects and assist companies to reduce carbon footprint, navigate the integrated energy system, and implement smart and innovative solutions. RAMBOLL Energy has more than 50 years of experience in the planning, design, and implementation of energy solutions. But what RAMBOLL Energy can actually do is to provide full project lifecycle services. And what do I mean by that? Is that we can support projects from the very early phases by providing feasibility studies, conceptual design, technical due diligence, following by environmental services, detailed design of plants, fit studies, owner's engineer, and EPCM, just to mention some of them. At RAMBOLL Energy, there is a big list of expertise, and one of those is biofuels and Bio2X, as well as green hydrogen and Power2X. And the combination of bio and Power2X can lead actually to the production of biofuels that can be used in the mobility sector, among other sectors, and SAF is an important part of the mobility sector. Just to briefly mention, in Europe, 3 countries, Germany, France, and United Kingdom, will be the ones that will need the biggest need of SAF by 2050. Based on Sky Energy calculations and announcements, power to liquid and alcohol to jet using waste will be the main 2 technologies to produce sustainable aviation fuels by 2050. Now, in order to cover the amounts required by the EU mandates, about 400 sustainable aviation fuel plants have to be built by 2050. As for US, in order to cover the amount, the required amount of SAF based on US mandates, approximately 750 SAF plants have to be built by 2050. So there are 7 certified methods based on to produce SAF based on the ASTM D7566 reference. In most of them, the blend level is up to 50%. However, for synthesized isoparaffins from hydroprocessed fermented sugars, the third one, and the last one, synthesized paraffinic kerosene from hydroprocessed hydrocarbons, esters, and fatty acids, the blend level is only up to 10%. Here is a graph, a diagram, an overview with SAF production routes that RAMBOLL can support projects with. So first is the lipid conversion, where feedstock such as used cooking oil, tallow, and algae can be used, and using hydrocracking or catalytic hydrothermolysis, SAF can be produced. Then is the biochemical conversion, where sugars from the organic fraction of the municipal solid waste, from industrial waste, or from lignocellulosic biomass, as well as flue gases or syngas can be fermented by microbes and produce organic acids, alcohols such as ethanol or butanol, or hydrocarbons, and then through specific processes to upgrade them to SAF. And finally is the thermochemical conversion, where technologies such as gasification, pyrolysis, and liquefaction can be used to produce syngas or bio-oil. Fischer-Tropsch technology is applied for syngas and some hydroprocess steps for bio-oil in order to finally produce SAF. RAMBOLL has all the expertise in-house, combining them with market player viewpoints and official literatures, which means official publications, articles, specific databases, in order to provide robust market assessment and actually answer questions of our clients based on availability of feedstock in a specific area and how much does this feedstock cost. Can this feedstock have stable composition throughout time in order to have a stable SAF production? Depends on the feedstock. What is the best route in order to produce SAF? And what are the key off-takers? As hydrogen is an essential part to produce SAF, what is the cost of electricity and hydrogen in the area of interest? And what are the possible changes in the future? What is the expected market sale price of SAF? There are a lot of forecasts giving values. Do all of them agree? What is the conclusion if we combine or if we compare all of them? And of course, information related to regulations and subsidies. And these are only some of the questions that we can answer and support our clients in the making decision around SAF. I would like to share some of our references. So the first reference is about a commercial assessment of investment opportunities in SAF, where RAMBOLL was called to assist the client on how to manage relevant opportunities around SAF. RAMBOLL offered a market assessment by identifying, mapping, and matching the relevant and attractive supply and technology options, taking into consideration parameters such as the availability, the readiness, and trends. Also, some implications of regulatory framework developments provided for the 10 best options. The result was to provide relevant opportunities related to SAF across the value chain based on maturity, economy, strategic fit, expected growth, and infrastructure readiness. The second reference is a concept study to investigate sustainable aviation fuels as derivative from power-to-X technology. The study included an overview of the opportunities, technical solutions, and locations for the proposed power-to-X technology, as well as a high-level market analysis on SAF, giving the expected demand and volumes of SAF in the future in the northern countries. The third reference is, again, a market study to determine the viability of selling SAF, but in the Nordics, Poland, the Benelux region, and the Nordics. By analyzing market trends and drivers on SAF, RAMBOLL offered detailed forecasts on volumes and prices on SAF by 2030 and 2050, supporting the decision-making process of the client. And in the fourth reference, the Norwegian aviation industry has assigned to RAMBOLL to investigate and assess profitable and possibilities for profitable and sustainable aviation fuels. The study included information such as the feedstock supply and available production technologies, as well as a policy instrument study, in order to be informed what it takes to implement SAF at the Norwegian airports. All in all, in order to acquire the required amount of SAF by 2050, projects have to be developed properly. And to do that, successful collaborations between stakeholders are essential. Synergy between bio and power-to-X technology, as well as the development and optimization of the technologies in order to acquire a proven technical concept. It is very important to have accurate information related to the availability of feedstock in order to secure it, as well as competitive feedstock supply chain. Off-take partners, and last but not least, investment and subsidies in order to minimize the risk that these new SAF routes bring and speed up the processes. And RAMBOLL is here to support on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Argyro. We have time for a few questions. So in the audience, if you have questions about the presentation, yeah, please. Yeah, please just assign the language that you will be
English.
asking. Okay, English. Okay.
My name is Riyad. I'm coming from sugar industry. So I did not see in the pathway for SAF approval any investigation for the biomass conversion to syngas to SAF technology. So we are talking about Fischer-Tropsch as part, the latest pass?
Oh, there is actually. So when, how can I go back to the graph? The red one. But you don't.
But this is like sugar to fermentation. You are
Yes.
talking about ethanol, alcohol to jet. So, but in the biomass, let's say the waste of sugar factory, for example, it's like beet pulp or molasses. You can go to gasification to produce syngas. From the syngas, you can add green hydrogen, or you can complete purely with the syngas to produce methanol, green methanol, or sustainable aviation fuel.
From biomass.
From biomass.
Yes. Yeah, it's a. Okay, here I have the lignocellulosic biomass from the agriculture, but it's not. Yeah, it's a second generation.
This is a classical way, just
feedstock.
available around the world. That fermentation to ethanol, then alcohol to jet to SAF.
Yes.
But from the biomass directly to syngas, till now there is no like clear pathway approved for this.
I mean, I have it from the municipal solid waste,
Maybe,
yes, but
maybe.
not the industrial waste. Yes, it goes to sugars.
Okay, no problem. I think maybe it's filled down under the lignocellulose biomass, like wood or beet pulp or any other lignocellulose.
Okay. Second generation, like straw again. You mean? Because I consider only second generation feedstock here.
Yes, second generation.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? The room? No?
However, straw and wood is in lignocellulosic biomass. So there is the path for gasification pyrolysis and producing gas.
Maybe I have one question about, I like the way that you help investors to decide on pathways. So do you have a tool that is dedicated to that, or you do separate, the study is in separate tools, and how do you proceed for that? Do you have dedicated tools, or?
No, it's separate studies based on the feedstock, based on the specific area of interest and the path, the product actually that the client would like to have. Yeah, the idea
And
is...
how much detail you go inside the process? Do you have just the, let's say, the key figures about each process, or you have some more sophisticated models that they can to account the process itself, the unit operation maybe, or maybe on a larger scale? I don't know.
There is a big team of process engineers actually that do all the energy and mass balance and can...
Okay, so you go to the scale of a plant,
yes,
and you do the unit operation, and you make the...
We do design of plants, detailed design of plants.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said that by 2050 you have also some price estimates per region, per country.
Yes.
How do you integrate in this vision the new pathways that haven't not been certified and the new feedstock that is underway? How do you take this?
No, we actually provide the best options based on the certified methods and technologies that are...
yeah, but the ones that are certified today. But you said that you make projections for 2050, so per region, so this will...
For the available technologies.
With the available today. Okay,
yes.
So these values could change with time. Each time we have new...
Yes, of course we can investigate like technologies with lower TRL, but we take into consideration, of course, the TRL.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in the room? Yeah, please.
Maybe yours. Yeah, just closer to.
Hello, Philippe Serorzi, work for Equinor. You probably know us. You talked about the US and Europe at the start, and there will be some of the two important driving markets. And if you look at this picture, which pathway will be favored, you believe, in the US, and which pathway will be favored in Europe?
Power to liquid and alcohol to jet, using waste, I will say. That's the two technologies. It's not a guess, it's based on graphs and announcements.
Do you have another question?
Yeah, now it's working. Yeah, just an follow-up, because we talk about, and we see that biogenic CO2 can be the link between, both biofuels and e-fuels. And,
Yes.
it's a big step, in a way. I mean, it's so much effort, for example, to focus first on the biofuel part. So how do you see that, developing? Do you see any developers that have already kind of that approach to kind of go for both at the same time, or do they say biofuel first and then e-fuels afterwards?
Both, I will say. I mean, there are developers that taking to take biogenic carbon dioxide and combine it actually with hydrogen and go for SAF. Yes, we can see that in the market. Yeah.
Yeah, just one last question before.
Good morning. I am Jean-Luc Bergonou. I'm working for Johnson Matthey, and I would like to understand why the FT, the Fischer-Tropsch route, is not favorized by the industry. Because apparently you are saying that, okay, alcohol to jet will be the most important pathway. Fischer-Tropsch, I mean that it was the first ISTM approved pathway. Yes.
No, it's also
Yes,
it's also the gasification in Fischer-Tropsch.
Yes, I've seen the red one, the green one.
Yes.
But why? I mean that you consider that it will be less important than the two other ones, the alcohol to jet, because alcohol to jet, in fact, you have to consider that the alcohol is 3 times less power. The content of the power in the alcohol is 3 times less than the FT crude, for example. And FT crude can be even been processed in normal refineries, which means that there will be no additional capex.
Just to clarify, these
Yes.
are announcements and calculations, not that you can find outside. Yes, it's a good question, but yeah, lignocellulosic biomass is like the potential of lignocellulosic biomass is huge. Of course, can be produced you can utilize to produce alcohols from fermentation, and yeah, to use gasification. It's true. It's true. I'm not. I'm not sure that I have a clear answer on that, but I would like to discuss it.
Thank you. Maybe nobody has a very clear answer. I mean that. Nobody maybe has a very clear answer on that. Then don't worry. I mean that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll proceed with the next presentation. Okay, thank you, Argyro. So now the second presentation will be presented by Yann LESESTRE, a manager at SIA Partners, and he will be talking about e-kerosene production from biogenic carbon dioxide, the perspectives, and the viability of the solution. Please, thank you.
Thank you. Please allow me to switch to French. Merci. Alors, en quelques mots, donc Yann LESESTRE, comme ça a été dit, je suis manager dans l'équipe énergie de SIA Partners. SIA Partners, nous sommes un cabinet de conseil en stratégie et en management présent dans une vingtaine de pays. Nous avons des bureaux notamment en France, à Paris, à Nantes, à Lyon, Marseille, Lille. Et nous avons également des implantations en Italie, au Royaume-Uni, en Allemagne, Pays-Bas et Belgique et Amérique du Nord également. Je vais donc maintenant vous présenter des enjeux de marché, je dis bien de marché, liés à la valorisation du CO2 biogénique à des fins de production d'e-kérosène. Et j'espère pouvoir apporter un point de vue complémentaire par rapport à d'autres interventions qui porteront sur les aspects technologiques dans la journée. Donc tout d'abord, rappelons les objectifs européens qui ont été mentionnés tout à l'heure. Le texte WeFuel EU, approuvé en septembre 2023, prévoit une intégration progressive de carburants alternatifs dans le mix énergétique du secteur aérien. Et ce texte prévoit également des sous-objectifs pour le développement de carburants de synthèse, c'est-à-dire de l'hydrogène décarboné ou renouvelable, et également des e-fuels. On pense évidemment ici au e-kérosène. Donc la part de carburant de synthèse devra atteindre 1,2% dans le mix énergétique du secteur aérien dès 2030. Cette part montera à 5% en 2035, puis augmentera progressivement sur les pas de 5 ans jusqu'à atteindre 35% en 2050. Essayons d'estimer quels seront les besoins en capture de CO2 pour atteindre ces objectifs. Prenons ici un cadre simplifié, car il y a beaucoup de paramètres qui entrent en jeu. Disons que l'hydrogène ne progresse pas dans le secteur aérien et que donc les objectifs sont atteints uniquement avec du kérosène. Disons également qu'il n'y a pas de progression d'efficacité énergétique. Et enfin, supposons qu'il n'y a pas d'importation d'e-kérosène et donc l'ensemble des kérosènes consommés en Europe sont produits en Europe. Nous vous proposons dans ce cadre théorique deux scénarios. Un scénario, c'est la courbe verte avec un trafic aérien constant entre aujourd'hui et 2050. Et un deuxième scénario avec une augmentation du trafic aérien d'environ 20% entre aujourd'hui et 2050, en cohérence avec le scénario bas proposé par Eurocontrol. Et donc, dans ces perspectives, on voit que dès 2035, les besoins en CO2 biogénique, en CO2 tout court, atteindront 15 millions de tonnes, tandis qu'en 2050, les besoins seront supérieurs à 100 millions de tonnes. Pour donner des ordres de grandeur, la consommation de CO2 sur le marché aujourd'hui en France se situe entre 500 000 et 1 million de tonnes. Il y a donc ici de nouvelles filières industrielles à construire, des technologies à expérimenter à grande échelle pour relever le défi de l'approvisionnement en CO2. Et comme nous sommes à Bio 360, nous allons maintenant insister sur la valorisation du CO2 biogénique. Pour rappel, le CO2 biogénique est du CO2 qui est issu de la valorisation de biomasse et de bioénergie. L'ADEME donne ici une définition un peu plus précise dans un rapport de 2023. Et, désolé pour la simplification, mais nous pouvons identifier, en simplifiant, 3 grandes typologies de sources de CO2 biogénique. Le CO2 de méthanisation, c'est-à-dire le CO2 qui est contenu dans le biogaz avant son épuration. Le CO2 issu des bioraffineries, par exemple des sites de production de bioéthanol, pour citer des réalités industrielles actuelles. Et enfin, du CO2 issu de différentes activités de combustion de bioénergie ou de biomasse. Et dans ces catégories, on va trouver des choses évidemment très très diverses, vous en doutez, des incinérateurs de déchets, des chaudières ou des cogénérations biomasse, ou encore des procédés industriels valorisant des bioénergies. On pense par exemple aux papeteries, mais pas que. Si on s'intéresse maintenant au volume émis par ces différents sites, on se rend compte que les sites de méthanisation vont être des petits producteurs de CO2, puisqu'un site va émettre entre quelques centaines et quelques milliers de tonnes par an, tandis qu'une bioraffinerie ou une chaudière ou une usine utilisant de la bioénergie vont émettre entre quelques dizaines et quelques centaines de milliers de tonnes par an. Pour vous donner un ordre de grandeur, un site industriel de production d'e-kérosène valorisera plusieurs centaines de milliers de tonnes de CO2 par an. On peut se dire de manière intuitive, et c'est ce qui est en train et c'est ce qu'on constate dans la réalité du marché, que les producteurs d'e-kérosène vont préférer nouer des partenariats avec quelques gros producteurs de CO2 plutôt que contractualiser avec des dizaines, voire des centaines de petits sites émetteurs, notamment des unités de méthanisation. Ce qui veut dire qu'au final, il n'y aura qu'un nombre limité de sites industriels qui pourront approvisionner les sites de production d'e-kérosène, ce qui créera des contraintes fortes pour les développeurs de projets quant à l'implantation des sites de production d'e-kérosène. à moins d'envisager le réseau de transport de CO2. Pour conclure ce slide, quelques mots sur les maturités technologiques. Aujourd'hui, je pense que certaines personnes dans la salle seront d'accord. Les technologies permettant le captage du CO2 existent. Certaines sont commercialisées pour quelques typologies de sites émetteurs de CO2, notamment les sites de méthanisation et les bioraffineries. Mais pour la grande majorité des typologies de sources de CO2 biogéniques, il faut encore expérimenter à grande échelle ces technologies de captage de CO2 pour valider les performances opérationnelles, technologiques, et également pour identifier les axes de baisse des coûts. Il y a ainsi plusieurs défis à la mobilisation de ce CO2 biogénique et on peut se demander pourquoi des producteurs d'ikérosène préféreraient valoriser du CO2 biogénique plutôt que du CO2 fossile. Et je propose ici 4 arguments. 2 arguments qui s'intéressent à des enjeux de court terme et 2 autres qui se penchent plutôt sur des enjeux de long terme. Commençons par le court terme. Comme je l'ai indiqué tout à l'heure, la demande européenne en ikérosène va émerger du fait des obligations européennes, mais cette croissance va être très progressive, en tout cas dans les 10-15 prochaines années. Il y a beaucoup de projets de développement d'ikérosène qui ont été annoncés en France et en Europe, également dans d'autres pays. Mais tous ne pourront pas se réaliser, en tout cas pas à court terme. Il y a ainsi une sorte de compétition entre les développeurs de projets pour faire émerger les premiers sites. Et dans cette course, les industriels qui choisiront de valoriser du CO2 biogénique auront quelques avantages. Tout d'abord, ils pourraient bénéficier d'une meilleure acceptabilité car il sera toujours plus vendeur auprès des acteurs territoriaux et des pouvoirs publics de s'inscrire dans des logiques territoriales avec des objectifs de valorisation des ressources locales, premier argument. Et deuxième argument, ces acteurs auront un petit avantage marketing lorsqu'ils parleront avec des consommateurs de carburants aériens. Les consommateurs de carburants aériens chercheront en effet à consommer des carburants alternatifs avec une forte intégrité environnementale et cela peut passer notamment par la valorisation de CO2 biogénique. Mais il faut également s'intéresser au long terme. Un projet de production d'ikérosène a une durée de vie supérieure à 20 ans. Ce qui veut dire que si on se dit que les premiers projets sortiront de terre d'ici 2027-2028, il faudra que les porteurs de ces projets imaginent à quoi ressemblera le monde en 2047-2048. Or, le cadre réglementaire européen nous donne des indications sur l'évolution du contexte de marché. Ce qui est prévu aujourd'hui, c'est qu'à partir de 2041, le CO2 fossile valorisé pour une production d'e-carburant ne sera plus compté comme une émission évitée. Autrement dit, à partir de 2041, seul le CO2 atmosphérique, c'est-à-dire capté en atmosphère, et le CO2 biogénique seront éligibles pour la production de carburants dits renouvelables ou bas carbone. Et quatrième argument, on rappelle que, ça a été dit tout à l'heure, que l'Union européenne et les États membres ont des objectifs très ambitieux d'atteinte de la neutralité carbone à l'horizon 2050, ce qui impliquera une élimination, en tout cas une réduction très, très nette des sources de CO2 fossiles. Et ainsi, il y a un danger pour les producteurs d'ikérosène qui souhaiteraient compter sur l'approvisionnement en CO2 fossile pour leurs besoins industriels. Intéressons-nous maintenant en quelques mots sur les enjeux de disponibilité du CO2 biogénique à échelle française. Alors, je ne vais pas passer trop de temps sur cette slide car ça reprend pour l'essentiel des messages de l'ADEME, l'Agence française de l'énergie et de l'environnement. Donc l'ADEME, dans un rapport sorti en décembre 2023, consultable gratuitement, estime les volumes de CO2 biogénique qui seront disponibles en 2050. Et selon les scénarios, si on ne retient que les sites qui produisent plus de 30 000 tonnes de CO2 biogénique par an, les volumes totaux disponibles seront compris entre 30 et 35 millions de tonnes. Alors, je précise que ce n'est pas le chiffre que vous retrouverez dans le résumé exécutif parce que l'ADEME a préféré retenir la valeur liée à la valorisation des sites produisant plus de 200 000 tonnes de CO2 biogénique. Donc, pour retrouver ces valeurs, ne vous arrêtez pas au résumé exécutif. En tout cas, cela montre bien, encore une fois, le besoin pour les producteurs d'ikérosène de s'appuyer sur des sources de CO2 biogénique fortement émettrices. Pour conclure, je voudrais présenter 3 typologies de risques et proposer des moyens de prévention de ces risques. La première typologie de risque concerne les technologies et les coûts. Comme j'ai indiqué tout à l'heure, les technologies de captage de CO2 existent, mais elles n'ont pas encore été expérimentées dans un environnement commercial, en tout cas pas pour toutes les typologies de sources de CO2 et pas à des niveaux qui seront nécessaires pour la filière des kérosènes. On ne peut donc pas exclure qu'il y ait des dépassements de coûts, des capex imprévus. Et par ailleurs, sur la durée de vie du projet, on ne peut pas exclure des surcoûts de consommation d'énergie par rapport à ce qui était initialement envisagé. Or, comme vous le savez, les systèmes de capture de CO2 consomment de l'électricité et de la chaleur pour certains. Et donc le risque pour le producteur de CO2, eh bien, c'est tout simplement d'avoir des surcoûts par rapport à ce qui a été envisagé, tandis que le risque pour le producteur d'ikérosène, c'est-à-dire le consommateur de CO2, c'est que ces surcoûts se répercutent sur le prix de vente. Pour prévenir ces risques, je propose ici 2 idées. Premièrement, prévoir lors de la conclusion du contrat un partage équitable de ces risques entre le producteur et le consommateur de CO2. Et deuxièmement, il faut insister sur l'accompagnement technique des producteurs de CO2 dans la sélection des technologies les plus performantes et adéquates par rapport aux enjeux du producteur. Deuxième typologie de risque, la prévisibilité des volumes. Nous sommes sur des business models nouveaux qui n'ont donc jamais été expérimentés. Un producteur de CO2 biogénique qui investit dans des technologies de captage de CO2 ne peut exclure totalement que dans 10-15 ans, le projet soit un échec et que le producteur d'ikérosène arrête son activité. Il y aura donc pour le producteur de CO2 des investissements échoués. Et à l'inverse, pour le producteur d'ikérosène, il y a toujours le risque de voir le producteur de CO2 biogénique arrêter son activité, soit de manière permanente pour des raisons économiques, soit de manière temporaire, par exemple pour des enjeux de maintenance ou pour des raisons de défaillance technique. 3 idées pour prévenir ces risques. Le premier serait de raccorder les sites à des réseaux régionaux ou voire nationaux ou européens de transport de CO2, ce qui permettrait pour le producteur de CO2 de diversifier sa demande et à l'inverse pour le consommateur de CO2 de diversifier ses sources d'approvisionnement. Deuxième idée, prévoir un approvisionnement complémentaire en CO2 atmosphérique en investissant en technologie de captage de CO2. Et troisième idée, prévoir dans les clauses contractuelles des mécanismes de pénalité en cas de défaillance de l'une ou l'autre des parties. Enfin, troisième typologie de risque que je voudrais mettre en avant, c'est celle liée à l'évolution du cadre réglementaire. Comme j'ai indiqué tout à l'heure, à partir de 2041, le cadre européen actuel sera très favorable à la valorisation du CO2 biogénique. D'ici 2040, il peut se passer beaucoup de choses. On sait qu'il y aura plusieurs élections au niveau européen et on ne peut pas exclure que le compromis trouvé il y a 6 mois ne soit plus d'actualité dans 15 ans, ce qui créera un risque par rapport à la compétitivité hors prix du CO2 biogénique. Et pour les producteurs d'ikérosène, les risques peuvent venir d'une évolution des ambitions européennes en matière de progression du ikérosène, enfin des carburants de synthèse dans le mix du secteur aérien. Un moyen de limiter ces risques serait de conclure des partenariats de long terme et même de très long terme avec des acteurs du secteur aérien, notamment, vous l'avez compris, des distributeurs de carburants ou des consommateurs de carburants aériens. Voilà, je vais m'arrêter là. S'il reste du temps, on peut passer aux questions. And I can answer in English if needed.
Merci beaucoup, Yann. So, do we have questions in the room? Des questions? Ouais.
So, Marc Delcourt, Global BIOENERGIES. So I was wondering if there is another place in the world where the regulations say that the black CO2 is not good for eSAF, or is it only Europe?
To my knowledge, no. But many CO2 future producer of e-fuels in the world want to export their products to Europe, and they have to adapt their production to the European regulation if they want to have a market here.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, maybe if I'll stay on the same topic, on the same question. So, in your opinion, what would happen for the actual project on CO2, on fossil-based CO2? Because if we stop counting them, will we just release the CO2 to the atmosphere directly? Would that be the...
That's a good question. As I said, the lifetime of e-fuel production project is more than 20 years.
Yeah.
But in 20 years, you can imagine that many things will happen and the technological environment will change. For example, we know that deck technology, DLC, are not mature enough. It's very costly to capture CO2 in the atmosphere. But we have some experts with very optimistic vision, and those experts think that by 2040 the atmospheric CO2 will be competitive with biogenic CO2. So maybe you can rely on a fossil CO2 for the next 15 years, and then switch to atmospheric CO2. Or maybe you can also invest in 10 years in a pipeline for CO2 transportation in order to get CO2 from a biogenic source. A biogenic source that maybe doesn't exist today, but will appear in the next decade.
Okay, thank you, Yann.
I have a question. How do you see the pass of CO2 to SAF, the power to liquid, whether with CO2, biogenic CO2, or carbon capture, is economic-wise, especially that the CO2 is not the dominant factor in the price of the SAF. So you'll have more than 1,700 euro coming from hydrogen and the OPEX. So in the market now, do you see that anyone can pay the cost of the SAF more than 2,800 euro? So in this range, it can be economic. Otherwise, if you go to carbon capture, today is not economic, and after 50 years, it will not be economic.
Yeah, that's a good question. Indeed, given the current technological context, e-kerosene is not competitive with other kerosene production pathway. However, as a reminder, we have those mandatory targets, and in the short term, this is what will drive the e-kerosene market. And we can say that one of the reasons for such ambitious targets for the e-kerosene production is that there will be a limited amount of biomass available for the production of biokerosene, and we have to invest in other technology, and probably the intermediate target for the production of e-kerosene aims at gaining maturity on the Fischer-Tropsch technology in carbon capture technologies in order to have a competitive e-kerosene by the middle of this century.
Okay, one last question, please. Short answer, please, for the time.
And very short question. Grégoire GD. I think the first final investment decision are expected within the next 2 or 3 years for the first e-kerosene project. What do you expect in this time frame regarding these topics of biogenic CO2? What news will we have?
Well, if you think that those targets will actually be realized, that the kerosene distributor will implement the regulation, I think that it will be too late if you decide to invest in 2 years, because the market will be very limited, and you have to be one of the first to actually produce e-kerosene if you want to reach the European market. And if you don't, maybe Europe will import its production from other countries. And some other continent has had projects for e-kerosene production and other e-fuel production.
Okay, thank you, Yann. Okay, we'll pass to the other presentation. Given that at the end we will have around 30 minutes of free questions with all the speakers. So, okay, so please welcome Marc Delcourt, co-founder and CEO of Global Bioenergies. He will talk to us today about a new pathway of SAF based on the isobutane molecule. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind intro. So I'm going to tell you about IBN SPK, and that's a new ASTM certified route to sustainable aviation fuel. So the lady from RAMBOLL could maybe add this new pathway to the map. First of all, a quick reminder about the global warming. So that's the figures for 2023. So it's burning. It's getting warmer and warmer. We had a few days above 2 degrees above the pre-industrial era, which means that's what was in the books for the end of the century. So the Paris Agreement were saying we expect to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees, maximum 2 degrees, and that's already happening, not 85 years later, but 8.5 years later. So it's happening 10 times quicker than what was expected. So it's really scary now. And there are a lot of things contributing to this global warming, and aviation is really one of these. I like very much this picture, which is done by a guy named Adam Symington, and it answers the question: where is the CO2 produced? Where is it produced? And so, the intensity is directly linked to the CO2, and you can see the major industrial hubs. So in Europe, especially Germany, in the Washington to New York corridor to Boston, you see China, you see India, but you also see what's happening in the transportation. You see the maritime shipment lines. You see the big one from the Malacca Strait to the Suez Canal. You see the one from Africa as well. That's maritime. That's cargo boats. But you also see the thinner lines. All these are the airplanes. All these are the commercial passenger jets, and you see that it's really serious. In fact, it's only 2 to 3% of the CO2 emitted, but growing quick. So it might become 5%, then 10%, 15% by 2050. And also there is a kind of double impact coming from the contrails. Maybe you know that when a jet is flying, it produces not only CO2 but also contrails, traînées de sillage in French. And these contrails are creating clouds which are contributing to the global warming. So air transportation is really in the list of things to do if we want to keep global warming under control. That's us, Global Bioenergies. So we're a small company. We're 50 people. We're listed on the Euronext. We're 15 years old. And during these 15 years, we have done only one thing. We have developed, and we start exploiting commercially, a process to convert renewable feedstocks, sugars, into isobutene, isobutene being one of the main molecules of the petrochemical industry. And there are a lot of applications, including in the sustainable aviation fuel. And we are pretty much at the crossroads of green chemistry and industrial biology. So it's a biological process. We use microbes, but it's also a chemical process, and you'll see all this more in details in the next slides. Today, our real vision is to impact the world of sustainable aviation fuel. We have a new technology. We're pretty much the new kid on the block. So it's been ASTM certified last year, 6 months ago, in fact, only. And that's really our vision. We're going to deploy this technology widely and abate a lot of CO2. On the short term, it happens that this technology also has niche markets, especially in the cosmetics. And so it helps deploying the technology, starting to sell, starting to produce. And so we have this situation where we have a short-term market in the cosmetics, and we embarked L'Oréal, big L'Oréal in the story. And we have a long-term vision in the sustainable aviation fuel. When I say long-term, I mean 2030. 2030 is really the day the sustainable aviation fuel market will really open. Before that, it's going to be only about waste cooking oil. So that's the sustainable aviation fuel market. It's a little redundant if compared to what has been shown earlier. All the data are coming from Sky Energy, the big leader in the sustainable aviation fuel business. It says that in 2030, the world will need 12 million tons of sustainable aviation fuel. That's Europe, the Refuel EU mandate. That's US, the Grand Challenge. And that's also UK and Japan starting to be active in the field. And in the very recent days, India is also saying something. Indonesia is also saying something. It might go up, and this figure might reach 15 million tons. So if we look at the production today of sustainable aviation fuel, it's very small, 0.5 million tons, and that's a maximum. It's probably more like 0.3. There are a lot of people saying, I'm going to build this and that plant, and if you pile all the plants that are in the projects, it's going to be 8 million tons. And so there are 4 million tons that are nowhere. No one is having an idea about how these 4 million tons will be produced. That's huge. That's a huge market, and there is room for newcomers. There is room for new technologies here. So that's our technology. We have engineered a microbe, bacteria. We have completely rewired the way it works. So all the genes inside have been changed, and we change a lot of things in this bacteria. And when we give sugar to this bacteria, it produces a gas which is named isobutene, which is one of the big molecules in the petrochemistry. 15 million tons produced from oil every year of isobutene. And isobutene being a gas, it volatilizes spontaneously from the broth. So it's a very innovative process. It's an artificial metabolic pathway. We've been the first one to do that. It's the first process to a gas, hydrocarbon gas. So a lot of new things, a lot of IP. So we're really, we have developed an IP fortress around this process. And then when we have this isobutene, so remember biology converts sugars into isobutene, and then we just have to stick the molecules 3 by 3, and it becomes sustainable aviation fuel. So we give sugar to bacteria, it produces a gas, we send the gas through an oligomerization tube, and we end up with sustainable aviation fuel. Very direct. It's the most direct technology to sustainable aviation fuel. So these molecules are liquid. It's a kind of light liquid. It's called isoalkanes or isoparaffins. What is interesting is that it has very good cold flow properties. When you are running a plane, you are at 35,000 feet. The temperature is -50. And at -50, many molecules would clot. And then you clot your pipe, and then you're ending with troubles in your combustion. And because there is no parking in the sky, the troubles can be very, very damaging. And so you absolutely need to be sure that your liquid will flow at this very low temperature of minus 50. The standard says minus 47. So you have to prove when you want to register a new molecule, you have to prove that you're still liquid at minus 47. And we did that with our molecule. In fact, at minus 47, we were still liquid, so we were very happy. But then we said, can we go below? And so we went down to minus 60, still liquid, 70, still liquid, 80, still liquid. And so, in fact, we have a wonderful cold flow properties, which means that our molecule is not only a good fuel, but it's also a kind of anti-freeze molecule. And it will help other molecules to be blended in future sustainable aviation fuel mixes. Another thing is it has very good combustion properties, and this remains to be proven in engine testing, but we think that it would produce much less contrails. I'll be back next year with proofs about this. So we end up with a very good molecule for staff. We did 5 years of regulatory efforts with the ASTM, and we are very proud to be the number 8 technology. You had 7 in the previous list in the first talk, and now we're number 8. We are in fact incorporated to the alcohol to jet section. It looks a little bit like alcohol to jet. We convert sugars into SAF, and so we are considered as alcohol to jet, although it's quite different. So now, if you look at this isobutene molecule, the molecule we produce from the bags, in fact, you can do aviation fuels, but you can do a lot of other things. You can do road fuels. You can do cosmetics, especially in the makeup. You can do fine chemistry, especially the flavors and fragrances. The citral, in particular, which brings the lemon flavor, is coming from isobutene. The menthol as well, from isobutene as well. You can do rubbers. You can do plastics. So that there is really a complete product tree of things which can be done with this single molecule, which is referred as a building block. So where are we today? So today we have started, back in 2021, we had a demo plant. So a demo plant in Germany, from which we produced the first tons. These first tons, we used them in the cosmetics. We did some demonstration in the makeup, especially. We did a brand containing these molecules. More recently, we started a commercial unit in eastern France, close to the city of Reims. And now we're producing more tons at a higher pace, and we're starting to sell. So we announced our revenues for first half last year, 3 million euros. We're starting to sell. We have a larger plant in the plans for 2027, and it's going to be much bigger. It's going to be in France. It's supported by the state. We received 16.4 million euros to build this plant from the government, from France Relance. And then we see the deployment in 2030 in the sustainable aviation fuel. There is no need to produce sustainable aviation fuel before, because there is no market. There is no market before 2030. The mandate says 2% in 2025, but it's all going to be taken by oils. What kind of feedstocks are we going to be using? So today we use first generation feedstocks, especially sugar beets. You have a nice sugar beet mountain here. We can also use wheat. We can also use corn. We can also use many things that are the feedstocks for industrial biology in these modern days. We are also working very hard for years on the second generation feedstocks. Everyone is looking for second generation feedstocks, and our more solid partner is Fibenol. Fibenol is the subsidiary of the number 2 player in the pellets industry, wood chips, and they devised a technology to extract the sugars embedded in these wood chips. So from wood, you can produce sugar. That's the Fibenol technology, and it's not only true at lab scale. They just started a commercial unit, big demo, small commercial. That's in the middle of Estonia, in the woods, on a big pulp and paper platform. Very impressive. So maybe the start of a new era where sugars will be produced from wood. And of course, the aim of all this is to reduce CO2 emissions. And we did some preliminary life cycle analysis regarding our process. What it says is that when it will gonna be exploited at a large scale, the CO2 emissions will be reduced by 69%. So this will have to be proven in the facts, of course, but that's the goal, that's the target, minus 70% about. That's our ecosystem. So we've been supported a lot by France and also by Europe. Very recently, we're a strategic partner from IATA, the aviation organization. Our first shareholder, our first client is L'Oréal, and that's for the shorter niche market in the cosmetics. Very close to Cristal Union, number 2 in the sugar industry in France. We announced a collaboration with Shell, and the ADEME, the French Energy Agency, is helping us a lot, funding us, and following the story for many years now. This is my last slide. All these technologies are very good. What we're doing is very important. That's what we think, and that's what will keep our company vibrant. But it will not do everything by itself. Technologies are important, but first we need to become more sober. We need to stop going to stop taking a plane every other day. We need to reduce our CO2 emissions individually, and the sobriety is really the first level. The technologies will do the rest, but they will not be able to curb the global warming by themselves. And that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Marc. Any questions in the room? Yeah, please.
Thank you for the presentation. It is well known that from butane, isobutane to the SAF, you need like 3 mol to go to the SAF to be in the series of C10, C15. But this is not the story. The story how to reach the isobutane from the biomass, you need to go to a fermentation process. That means you are dropping your yield like 25%. So from 1 ton, you'll go to 250 kg for the ethanol. Then you'll go half of the yield to go to isobutene. Then go to the SAF. That means your total yield in weight basis will be dropped less than 15%. So is the cost deserve this yield dropping?
Well, in fact, you're talking in terms of mass yield. And it's true that when you go from carbohydrates, which mean sugars, which are a carbon and a molecule of water, to hydrocarbons, which means a carbon and hydrogen, you lose the oxygen moiety. And the oxygen moiety is about half the mass. So you lose a lot of weight, but you don't lose any energy because the oxygen is dead weight. So if you look, for example, if compared to ethanol, from 1 ton of sugar, you're going to produce 500 kilograms ethanol, let's say. That's the Pasteur yield. Yeah, sugar to ethanol. Yeah, but let's do the math first from sugar. So sugar to ethanol, 1 ton to 500. Sugar to SAF, in our case, 1 ton to 250,000. So it's twice less in terms of mass. But if you look in terms of energy content, it's the same. The ethanol, the energy content in the ethanol and the energy content in the smaller quantity in mass of SAF is the same. So we can absolutely be compared to the alcohol to jet pathway because it's the same math in terms of energy. It's not the same way to handle the things. But if you look at the ATG, you go to ethanol and then you need to reduce and you lose the weight in the same way.
Other questions? Maybe I have a question for the alternative uses also. Do you think that finally the SAF use will be the most wise use in terms of value in the market? Don't you think that cosmetics or other applications could buy this feedstock with rates higher than biofuel buyers or biofuel market?
Sure. In fact, when you have niche markets, as it is the case in our story, you absolutely need to first exploit these niche markets because they will pay the learning curve. So when we produce, we learn, we reduce the cost, and then we're ready for the next scale. So it's absolutely necessary to really take the time to exploit in the niche markets. Now, the niche markets, by definition, are small. So in the cosmetics, it's a big molecule, in fact, for the cosmetics. The isobutene derivatives is many percent of the cosmetics, but it's only cosmetics. It's very small in comparison to sustainable aviation fuel. And so there is room for one plant, maybe a second one, but there will not be a great story in the cosmetics. Okay. And there are other niche markets that we are targeting. I mentioned the flavors and fragrances, for example, lemon, menthol, some flowery fragrances as well. These markets can pay a little bit more for naturalness. And so we're going to go through all the markets that can pay additional money for the naturalness. And the SAF is going to be really the main target, and is going to be the big story for us. But we need to be ready, really ready with the process optimized and at the right cost at that time.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, who's first?
Okay. There will be lots of stuff to say regarding your point of view, but aviation footprint compared the 2% compared to the 30% of building or 30% of road transportation and so on. But it's not the point here, not my question. My question, you have not mentioned price, cost, production cost. Where do you stand on this side? We all have in mind that kerosene is around some $100 per ton, $1,000 per ton at most, that the airlines would accept something like 2-3 times the cost of the kerosene. What that mean for your technology? Does it rely on upscaling in terms of price reduction? And could you reach this 2-3 times kerosene price target?
So, thank you for the question. I think it's a very important one, but there is something which I would like to rephrase. When you said the airlines could accept 2 to 3-fold, in fact, it's not in their hands. The citizens have voted for people saying we're going to put 6% SAF in all airplanes taking off from Europe. The airlines will have to pay for it, whatever the price. That's the present situation.
But the penalty is 2 times the cost of kerosene.
There is a lot of discussion about what is going to be the penalty cost, and some people say it's going to be 2 times the SAF price, not the price of kerosene.
Today it's 2.8 euro per liter.
Yeah, today. So today, and we will see how it will evolve. Today, the price for sustainable aviation fuel is at about 3,000 euros per ton. That's the HEFA price from waste cooking oil. People are starting to talk about 5,000. Is it going to be? Really in the market at some point? We'll see. What is clear is that the next technologies will be more expensive. We're going to a more expensive world. It's going to be true for alcohol to jet. It's going to be true for us. It's going to be true for Fischer-Tropsch, and it's going to be very true for ESAF. So everyone is going to be above the HEFA price. How much above? It's not clear yet. It's not clear yet, and it's not clear for no one, because there is no market for second generation feedstocks already. So we don't know the price in 2030 of second generation sugars. So no one knows that. The market is just starting. we'll see at that point what it is. What is sure is that we're going to use, it's going to be a multiple. We need typically 4 kilograms of sugar for 1 kilogram of SAF, so you can do the math. And then there is the process and the OPEX and the CAPEX. So we expect, of course, we're going to be below 10 euros per kilo by far. We expect to be below 5. And the game is just starting today.
Okay, thank you, Marc. Last question.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
So the blend level is 50%.
Yeah, blend level 50% for us, like the other ones.
Yeah.
So it's been authorized 50%.
Yeah, so it's under Annex 5 together with the other alcohol to jet.
Yeah, it's a little odd because that's the FAA request. Their requested will be in the Annex 5 with the other ATG, alcohol to jet, although in our technology there is no alcohol at all.
Exactly. I mean, I'm aware because I know that is from ethanol, isobutanol, or butylene. Like
Isobutene.
Isobutene. Yes, this one is under Annex 5, which is the alcohol to jet. It's not that I'm not aware and I didn't put it.
Okay. Yeah, but on your slide you put butanol and not isobutene.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we'll pass to the next presentation. So yeah, unfortunately our speaker Yawar Abbas NAQVI from KBR, he couldn't his flight didn't take off from Paris today because of weather, not because of fuel shortage, luckily. So we will go directly to the next presentation. Dan Hayes from CEO at CELIGNIS Limited, and he will be presenting SAF production through seaweeds using, I think, the alcohol to jet pathway.
Okay, thank you for the invitation to speak today. So yeah, I was invited to speak on a rather interesting topic, seaweed to SAF. It's, let's say, a little bit further down the line, but certainly it's an interesting topic that requires investigation. And it's a very different scenario than second-generation biofuels when you talk about wood and straw, seaweed, and I'll go into detail about that shortly. I'll just give a little background to CELIGNIS. So we are a service provider for the bioeconomy. We do analytical laboratory characterization of feedstocks and the products of biomass conversion. We also provide bioprocess development services up to a TRL level of 6 for various types of technologies focused on biofuels, bioproducts, biochemicals, and biomaterials. So we're about 10 years old. We spun out from a EU project that I coordinated during my PhD. And basically the reason I formed the company was because I was looking at the time at the scenario for Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, for producing second-generation biofuels. And I was trying to do a desk-based study to see what kind of volumes were economically viable. And what I found was that there really isn't the data out there to understand the feedstock and to understand the potential. And it really needed an in-depth characterization of these materials out there to get an understanding of their compositional profile, their variability, and their suitability for various types of technologies. So I set up the company about 10 years ago now. We've been expanding quite quickly over that period. We now occupy 2 different premises within the city of Limerick in the west of Ireland. One of those is purely focused on laboratory characterization work. That's CELIGNIS Analytical. And the other facility is called CELIGNIS Bioprocess, where we do the processing activities up to currently 100-liter scale. Later this year, we'll be going to the cubic meter scale. Fermentation, hydrolysis, downstream processing, and so forth. So I'll just give a little bit of background on some of the different things we do. So we started out very much focused on lignocellulose chemistry and the complexities and the sort of the intrinsic differences between feedstocks and how those are understood and differentiated. So that we look at things like cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin, the primary constituents of lignocellulosic material. For anyone who doesn't know, lignocellulose in this context means things like wood, straw, grass. It can consider certain aspects of municipal waste as well would come under that. One thing we do in a lot of detail actually is we look at the liquids that come out of the process. And that's really important to understand when you're developing a technology, you're evaluating a process, you've got all kinds of different things going on in there. Let's say you have a lignocellulosic material, you want to get the sugars out. Well, they may not come out entirely as monomers as you like. They may be oligomers, they may be degradation products. These may be beneficial, they may be detrimental. We can detail profile these, and we can look at ways in which, trying to understand the mechanisms in which they are formed and how that can be steered in the right direction for whatever the process is that's being considered. We do work as well related to the thermal properties of biomass. This is particularly important when you're considering, let's say, the residues of a process. So if you're following a biorefinery approach where you try and exploit the maximal value from each constituent of biomass, you're inevitably going to have residues. And if you can't think of alternative uses for those, then combustion or gasification or some kinds of energy production system is appropriate. And we have all the technology and all the infrastructure to give a detailed understanding of that for feedstocks. And then we do a lot of work as well with anaerobic digestion. We do all of the kind of analyses you can really think of in that sector, the basic ones, VFAs and volatile solids and so forth. We do biomethane potential tests, but we also do really in-depth biological studies related to the process of anaerobic digestion. So we look for things like toxicity assays, we look for the microbial activity of the output of a digester in order to see how well it's doing each of those stages of the AD process. Another thing we do, which I see is very popular here in this conference, is work related to biochar. So we characterize biochar samples for all different kinds of properties related to carbon sequestration, thermal treatment, soil amendment, plant growth trials, and so on. We do this under the auspices of the European Biochar Certificate methods, so we can see if a certain material will pass or fail those tests. And we can also understand the feedstock and give suggestions on what is the most appropriate feedstock to produce a biochar and what are the best conditions to process that biochar, to process that feedstock to get the biochar. And we can also produce this biochar in a small scale in our laboratories. Another thing we do is we go into the much higher value constituents that are present within biomass. So this would be kind of like a biomass detective works, looking for the high value, maybe low abundance, but extremely interesting materials that are present within the feedstock. An example recently that was much interest would be the cannabinoids from hemp, CBD, CBG, and so forth. Now that market has fallen out. The price has dropped substantially in recent years. But if you were the first one there with CBD and CBG and you're offering it a couple of years ago, there was a significant amount of money to be made. And what we can do is we can profile feedstocks and look for those hidden gems within the chemistry of the biomass. We do a lot of work as well which is related to biological treatment of biomass, whether that's enzymatic hydrolysis or the fermentation of the sugars that are liberated. We do that at various scales up to 100 litre, but cubic meter going forward this year as well. And then we do work related to bioprocess development. So for example, we can develop a full bespoke process for someone who is looking to, let's say, produce ethanol from a feedstock. We can look at the pre-treatment, the hydrolysis, the fermentation, or we can audit a process and we can see where the weak points are, and we can do experimental work in order to improve the conditions and optimize the process. Just some of the examples of the bioprocess projects work we've done here. A lot of those images you see on the right-hand side came from seaweed. So we were working on technologies to extract polysaccharides from seaweed at various types of properties for memory foams, for personal wear, personal care, cosmetics, and all kinds of different applications related to the interesting polysaccharides you have within seaweed. We're very active in biomass research through the Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 programs. These are some of the projects that we're currently involved in. And these are some of our clients. We have about 1,200 clients across the bioeconomy sector. Most of the companies you can think of in this space, we probably worked with them to date. This is a map of some of our clients. So moving on to the seaweed's particular aspects, firstly, terrestrial biomass. You all know first-generation biofuels, basically in a simple term. That's when you take a food or an oil crop and you use it to make a biofuel. You can use carbohydrates in the form of starch or sucrose to make, let's say, ethanol, which you can convert to jet fuel, as we've heard earlier, by the alcohol-to-jet process. Or you have lipids, which can be hydrogenated to make the sustainable aviation fuels that we've heard of previously. In terms of second-generation biofuels, you're dealing with polysaccharides of a different nature. So cellulose, for example, it's all glucose, like starch, but it's arranged in a very different way, which makes it much more difficult to break apart into the constituent units. Hemicellulose is also more complex because it has all different kinds of sugars that may be more difficult to ferment than the glucose that you have in cellulose. And lignin is another material, a very complex polymer that so far has been challenging to produce biofuels from, let's say. On the left-hand side, you can see an image representing the kind of steps that need to be undertaken in order to valorize lignocellulosic material. This is a representation of some of the pathways that are used to process lignocellulosics to biofuel products. This is also applicable to the SAF route. So as we've heard from the previous speakers, there's basically two routes. There's the thermal process where you gasify a feedstock and then you go through a, let's say, a FT synthesis to produce a fuel that's suitable for aviation. Someone asked earlier why is FT not considered going forward as a sort of a mass market fuel? My answer to that would be basically it's an economy of scale issue. This technology has been around for a long time. You need to have a significant sized facility in order for it to be economically viable. And that hasn't proven to be the case yet with biofuels. There was a facility in Germany that closed down about 10 years ago called the Coren technology. That was using wood to FT diesel. There have been recent advances in what's called micro-FT. However, these have yet to sort of translate into economical biofuels on the marketplace. Another route would be pyrolysis to produce a bio-oil, which can then subsequently be hydrotreated again to produce an aviation fuel. There's a number of companies looking at this at the moment. One example would be Alder Fuels in the US. And then you have the fermentation route, so the biological route. You produce your sugar via some mechanism, whether that's an enzymatic hydrolysis or an acid treatment to get the single sugars. And then you take those sugars and you ferment them to a product such as ethanol, butanol, or the previous product we heard from Global Bioenergies. So this is just a simple graphical representation of some of these approved pathways that we've heard about earlier. I won't go back over those because you've previously heard how they work. So the gasification route, it involves high temperatures. It produces a syngas. There are complications related to this, and these vary in their importance depending on the type of feedstock that you're looking at. So the major problem you have with biomass is the production of tars that can condense on your catalysts and reduce the efficiency of the catalytic process. Moisture is also a problem. You generally need to use low moisture content feedstock for gasification, and ash or inorganic material can also be problematic as it affects the thermal profile of the material, and it can also interfere with catalytic downstream processes. Also of great importance as well is the sulfur and nitrogen content. These really result in NOx and SOx emissions, and this is certainly an issue with seaweed where you have high protein contents and high sulfur contents due to the sulfated polysaccharides that are present. The other route, again, as you've heard, is the alcohol route. So you can either produce directly a product via fermentation that is suitable for aviation fuel, or you can go the alcohol-to-jet route, for example, that is being pushed by companies such as LanzaJet. So I'll just move on to the chemistry of seaweed and why it's so different and why it's so complicated, but also why it's quite exciting. You have three types of seaweed that are out there. You have brown, green, and red seaweeds. And these vary in their chemistry, in their potential applications, and in their seasonality, regions of production, and so forth. Brown seaweed is oftentimes of much interest in European climates, and that has a very particular chemistry related to it. So there is cellulose present, but cellulose is one of the minor polysaccharides in most seaweed species. Instead, you have other types of polysaccharides, and the major one of interest, let's say traditionally with brown seaweed, has been alginate. And alginate is a polymer of two uronic acids, mannuronic acid and guluronic acid. These can vary in their relative proportions and their substitutions. However, this polysaccharide has various applications in food, in cosmetics, and various other market applications. Mannitol is a storage carbohydrate in seaweed. It is a sugar alcohol that's present on the right-hand side there. Fucoidin is a sulfated polysaccharide containing Foucault's units, along with some glucose and other constituents. And laminarin, again, is another glucose polymer, but very different from cellulose. It has a much shorter degree of polymerization, and it has one or two other sugars in there, the terminal end units. Red seaweed, an example would be Palmaria palmata, has, again, different polysaccharides, which require different technologies to fully efficiently valorize them. One of the main constituents in red seaweed would be agar, and agar is a polysaccharide containing two major units, agarose, which is a repeating disaccharide, and agaropectin, which is a disaccharide containing uronic acid residues. In general, red seaweed has a predominance of galactose, which is a 6-carbon sugar. That is the main sugar in carrageenan, along with an anhydrous form of galactose. There are also cellulose present in red seaweed, and there's mannan as well in the sulfated form present. Finally, you have green seaweed. In that seaweed, the main polysaccharide of interest would be called ulvan, and that is a polysaccharide containing various uronic acid residues. So glucuronic acid in one form, iduronic acid in another form, alongside rhamnose and some xylose units as well. There can be some cellulose also present in green seaweed, and also some xylan polysaccharides as well. So related to all of this then, how does this work in the context of sustainable aviation fuel? The first thing to say, there are some advantages of seaweed. Before we get to the disadvantages, because there are plenty, there are some advantages, right? You have an abundant resource, it already exists. There is no land use conflict, because obviously it exists out in the sea. It has a low cost in certain cases if it already exists. The logistical is a different factor. But it can be a low cost, and it can also be high production if you even do it in a cultivated context, which is an interesting prospect going forward with some suppliers. And it really has a lot of value, seaweed, in a biorefinery context. I think if you only consider seaweed as a feedstock for SAF, you're going to run into trouble, because you're producing a final product that is a relatively low price. However, if you look at all that interesting chemistry you have within the seaweed, not just the polysaccharides, but various bioactive materials, polyphenols, and so forth, you can get much higher value from those. You can produce those in low volume, high value. High volume, lower value SAF suddenly becomes feasible when you consider as an entire biorefinery context. However, there are challenges. So one of those is logistical. No one has really tackled in a mass scale the logistical operation of harvesting large volumes of seaweed that is extremely wet, getting it to a central facility, and producing a product at scale, which would be necessary for many of the SAF technologies, for example, the FT diesel route. As you've seen, the chemistry is very variable and is very different from lignocellulose and from our traditional biofuel feedstocks. Not only that, but the chemistry varies within the same species according to various other parameters such as season, location, and so forth. At CELIGNIS, we've analyzed about 3,000 samples of seaweed covering every kind of species you can imagine under all kinds of various conditions. So we're very familiar with the variability of the feedstock, but we've also worked on studies where we try and correlate that variability with supply-side parameters such as season, location, and so forth, in order to somehow reduce the complexity and unpredictability of that feedstock. And yeah, so again, as I've mentioned, the moisture content is very high, and the ash content is often very high in seaweed feedstocks. This can cause a challenge for a number of different technologies where you're trying to valorize that, particularly some of the thermal processes. Again, as well, the ash is going to be a residue of your process, so you'll have disposal issues to consider. Finally, then, on that context, if you're looking at a hydrolysis and fermentation route, it's completely different polysaccharides from those you have predominantly within lignocellulose. So you have to look at a strategy whereby you break those up, and then what do you do with those individual units? Mostly it's not glucose, it's something else. It may be uronic acids, for instance. And there are challenges in fermenting those directly. Can be done, but it requires optimization and work, or requires an intermediate step where they are converted to another form of sugar and then fermented. So just finally then, I'll just mention some of the work we do at CELIGNIS specifically related to seaweed. So over the last couple of years, we'd have a huge interest in the work we've done related to seaweed. We have a lot of inquiries, a lot of people asking, why don't you do this, why don't you do that? So we have a whole list of packages now. Some of these are related to the SAF route, such as the carbohydrates, but a lot of them are related to the high-value constituent bioactive properties of seaweed, which are very valuable when exploiting it in a biorefinery context. Beyond that, at CELIGNIS, we have also worked on bioprocess development projects for our corporate clients, where we have taken their seaweed samples and developed a bespoke process for them. So that could be extraction of polysaccharides for use in cosmetic products, use in biomaterials. It could be the production of sugars from these feedstocks, or it could be a full steam process moving from the feedstock to the hydrolysis to the fermentation to get a final product. So yes, that's it from us. I'm happy to have any questions.
I have time for one or two quick questions. Okay, I have maybe one question about the heterogeneous aspect of the seaweed. You have different kinds of sugars, of polysaccharides, so it's like you not find each time the exact enzyme to do it, or it will be very costly. So do you think that chemical hydrolysis could be a good solution here for dilute acids, for example, or something like that? Or what do you think about?
It's certainly one of the options to look at, yeah. By the way, if anyone's interested in talking personally, we are at stand D15. We're part of the Irish contingent. So,
okay, okay, good. Thank you very much. Now we'll welcome Tommaso BARSALI. Tommaso, he's a senior agronomist at the Record Consortium, and he will talk about the production of low ILUC and negative carbon lipids for SAF production.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I will speak in English. So I'll start a short presentation of myself. I am, as mentioned, my name is Tommaso BARSALI. I'm an agronomist. I work for a Record Consortium. You can find us at stand G34 in the Italian pavilion, just next to the German pavilion. So today I will speak a little bit about our experience in a 5 years experiment on the use of biochar to produce virgin lipids, but compliant with low ILUC requirements. So as you can easily understand from the start, I will not speak about technology. It's not the focus today, also because I'm an agronomist. But on the possibility to use existing technology like the HEFA production pathway on something else than waste lipids, not competing with food production. So first of all, I'll do just a brief company presentation of Record. So we are a public-private no-profit research consortium located in Italy. We have among our members the Polytechnic of Turin, the University of Florence, plus various companies, private companies that work in the field of circular economy, biomass, etc., and renewables. So we are a multidisciplinary team. I started as a first agronomist in 2018 in Record, so I was the only agronomist in a world of engineers and chemists. It was a difficult times for me. But this is interesting because we can provide various type of consultancy for our clients and for the research projects that we undertake. So this goes from chemical engineering to chemistry, biotechnology, agriculture. And for example, we have 4 different areas in Tuscany and in Piedmont also now, since last year in the Environment Park in Torino. So we have an experimental area for technologies where we have all the prototypes that we built in Scarperia, together next to our laboratory, where we can perform various types of analysis on biomass, biochar, biofuels, and also soil. Our office space at the University of Florence, and also my playground, the experimental area in Montepaldi, which is the agricultural, where we perform the agricultural field trials. So very briefly, in our technological experimental area, we have a 100 kilogram per hour rotating kiln. So this is a continuous plant, as you know. That's where we produce biochar for our research projects, and for our clients. We also have other types of prototypes. We have a continuous HTL, 1 kilogram per hour. This might be of interest. And we, for example, recently, this is our latest prototype to turn waste into biocarbon and nutrient-rich, especially phosphorus-rich material that can be used as fertilizers. So basically, this is a patented process that my colleague Andrea Salimbeni at our stand can explain much better than me. But you basically, for example, take wastewater sludge or other industrial effluents that you first pyrolyze and then extract phosphorus from. So you have a biocarbon that is fit for the steel industry, for the decarbonization of the steel industry, and phosphorus-rich residue, which can be used as a fertilizer. We also have many other, this is the process that you see of chemical leaching is the one that I was mentioning. So we have quite a bit of work going on for technology. We also have, as I was saying, an agronomic experimental area. So we have 1 hectare of fields where we perform field trials, especially lately with biochar as a soil amendment, which is the topic of my presentation today. We also have some experience in anaerobic digestion, in microalgae lab photobioreactors construction. And we also have a climatic chamber for indoor trials. So with lesimeters, we explore the nutrient use efficiency, the water use efficiency in various conditions, including when using biochar, and also through lesimeters, the nutrients that exit or don't exit the system. That's the picture that you see up right. So, we have many agronomic trials that we have been performing, especially with biochar, co-composted biochar, in different settings. For example, the image that you see with the green field is an organic barley trial that we made with the co-composted biochar. So basically, to see the effect of this treatment as compared to business as usual nitrogen inorganic fertilization. And we'll see some more results after. We did a trial in Spain, a 5-year trial in Spain with camelina, which is what I'll be talking today. So many different things that we have gained some experience and insight on the use of biochar in soil. So going back to the project that I'll be presenting today, the Bioforest project is a H2020 5 years project that has just been concluded actually in June successfully, although sometimes it was difficult, but we let's say succeeded in finishing it. So the project concept in 2018, of course, was to accelerate the deployment of aviation biofuels and support the accomplishment of pre-commercial plans. We're talking about 2018, of course. So to bring SAF from HEFA to a full commercial scale in a new plant using residual lipids like UCO and tallow. And number point 2 that you see in the project objective is to investigate alternative supply of sustainable feedstock, recovering marginal land, prone to desertification, so fulfilling the requirements of low ILUC production of virgin lipids. Also to test the entire chain. So the results of this project are that we, through ENI, produced 1,000 tons of SAF from HEFA, through HEFA from residual lipids. Actually testing a slightly different route because they used naphtha long cut to produce HEFA. So this is a pathway that was theoretically possible but not completely demonstrated at a commercial scale. So this was delivered for commercial flights in a non-segregated mode through KLM at Schiphol airports. So was blended in commercial facilities. And then we did this R&D work on marginal land in Spain and Italy that I will present now. So, as I was saying, we made multiple trials. One was in Italy. It was a 1-year field trial. And the other one was in Spain, 5 years field trials. So we'll present now the 1 year in Italy with Camelina. So first of all, a few words about Camelina. Camelina sativa is a crop, an oleaginous crop from the Brassica family that is particularly resistant to drought conditions, so to low rainfall. So this makes it particularly interesting for the southern part of Europe and the entire Mediterranean region to produce oil. So what happens is that, this is a more general consideration, I think, that joins what has been said also before, is that we should not, many times we hear about, drought-tolerant species or maybe even genetically engineering drought-tolerant species and think that maybe this will solve the issue of not having water. This is actually, as an agronomist, my opinion is that this is not possible. We have to adapt and combine various types of solutions, including, of course, drought-tolerant species, but we should think about the soil. We should think about how to use water more efficiently, because having a drought-resistant species doesn't mean that you can actually avoid sparing water, for example. We should think about nutrient use efficiency. So we have to combine various types of solutions together. And this is what we did in this field trial. So we said, okay, this is a drought-resistant plant, but what happens is if I put biochar in soil? What happens to the yield and what happens to soil? So we compared this, we compared compost, biochar, compost and biochar. And the business as usual, which is NPK fertilization, and of course control. So in 2 different locations in Tuscany to account for different types of soils. So this is the design of the experiment. We also compared 2 different varieties of Camelina, one short cycle and one long cycle. As you can see, the applied dose of biochar was quite low because it was a 3 tons per hectare equivalent. So this is not, in literature you can find from very large amounts to normally 5 to 10 tons. This is what, if I started the experiment now, this is the application that I would recommend. So this was done, as I was saying, 1 year a field trial. So we started in March and April to harvest in July. We performed soil sampling analysis before and after, of course. It was a very dry season. It was the second driest year in the last 10 years. So there is not only the problem about temperature, as we know, but also the problem about rainfall patterns, because now more and more we observe, let's say, that yes, you may have the total annual amount of rain comparable to what you were used to, but the events are much more compressed, followed by a long period of droughts, and this is not good for agriculture. Good for agriculture is the type of rain that we had this morning. So this, tiny rain that gets down and soaks everything. So we had also very high temperatures. So from seeding to harvest, 160 millimeters. It's really not much. So the results on yield. So this is on aerial dry biomass. So in the first location in Terontola, I must I forgot to mention that this is a much more sandy soil. As you can see, there is a partially positive, statistically significant positive effect about biochar and the combination of all the organic treatments. In Montepaldi, the results were not statistically significant, so there were no differences, but the yield was really very, very low because this is a very different type of soil. It's a clay, much more clay soil, and plus also the total rainfall was even lower. So going to grain, which is what is interesting for us, to SAF producers, let's say. As you can see, there is an indication of an increased seed yield, especially in Terontola for the short-cycled variety, CCE26. So this is also quite interesting because camelina is normally sown in the autumn for harvest in summer, and this highlights the possibility of having a real short cycle, so something that is seeded in spring and harvested in summer. There was also an interesting effect on oil yield, which means the total. So you have the grain yield and plus the oil content of the seeds. So this is a multiplication that you have to make. So this is also interesting for the nutrient use efficiency of the cultivation of camelina with biochar. So what about soil? So we have good indications about yield. What about soil? So as you probably know, the Commission implementing regulation in 2022 included biochar as a sustainable management practice when you want to produce low ILUC sustainable biofuels, including SAF. And it attributes to those sustainable management practice a factor, a greenhouse gas savings factor. So, which in the case of biochar is limited to 45, only in the case of biochar, is limited to 45 grams of CO2 per megajoule biofuel. So how does it work? You basically have to measure the carbon, what is called the carbon stock in soil before and after, and up to a period of 10 years. This is something that is quite difficult for farmers to do and also bears a cost. I will just briefly mention the fact that carbon stock is not organic carbon only, but it's the product of carbon, organic carbon in soil and the bulk density of soil. So I will not get into technicalities, but it's not only organic carbon. So the effects on soil properties. So in general, we can see that there is an effect on the available water and air, pore space, so a decreased density of soil. So the soil has, roots have more space to develop, and they will find more available water when you use biochar and co-composted biochar in soil. There is also a higher nitrogen use efficiency that we found, especially for the short-cycled variety of camelina. So this means that if you introduce biochar in the story, you will probably, the plants will probably use the nitrogen that you apply in whichever form more efficiently. And so now I will switch to the results after 3 years of the experiment in Spain. So the results on yields were very similar to what we found after 1 year. So with a statistically significant, in most of the cases, effect of biochar and co-composting biochar on yield. We attribute this to what we just saw. So the more availability of water in soil to plants. But here we have results on soil that are a little older, so 3 years. So the carbon stock, here again we had 2 locations in Spain. We had only one statistically significant difference, which was for the incorporation of biochar. So the carbon stock, if you use the ESCA calculation method, was increased using biochar. Actually, this is the table form of the graph that you see. In the 2 locations using biochar, you had a carbon stock increment ranging from something from 17% to 25% of carbon stock increment. So as you can see also, the business as usual, so the NPK actually provoked a decrease of the carbon stock, which is something that is in line with what we know, with actually what has happened in the past 70 years in agriculture. So we continue providing nitrogen, phosphorus, and nutrients to the soil, but we don't provide carbon. So microbial biomass and roots will consume carbon. You can see also that there are some confusing elements when you go to compost and combi, which is the co-composted biochar. So some things that we don't really understand about the carbon stock in soil. However, there are some, let's say, take-home messages that we can do, is that it is possible to increase carbon stock in soil through the use of biochar, and this way actually providing, in some cases, more than 100% of greenhouse gas savings when applying the ESCA calculation. So actually a negative fuel. Of course, is this replicable and applicable to every other meteorological year, to every other soil? Probably not. However, thank you. You can imagine that this is worth a try, especially for farmers, because you're not only doing carbon sequestration, but you're also increasing probably your yield. So we successfully demonstrated that biochar is a good and advantageous, let's say, possibility for farmers to increase their yield, make carbon sequestration, and for SAF producers to access to the greenhouse gas savings provided by the ESCA factor. Okay, I think this is all. Thanks for your attention.
Good, Tommaso. Thank you. Questions about the topic? Yeah, maybe I have a question about the residues of camelina when you take the lipids. The residues are not good for animal food? They have toxins or?
So there is the problem with you mean the camelina cake after extraction?
Yeah,
Yes. I'm not a specialist in the genetic of that plant. However, I know that there are some varieties that have higher erucic acid, which is what is not doesn't make it fit for feed. However, there is also genetic research on developing varieties that have lower erucic acid. But I know for sure that, for example, camelina cake, you can extract many proteins, as was said before for algae. You can extract many proteins and compounds of interest for cosmetic industry, for example.
Okay. I have a second question about the limits. How many times we can put the biochar in the soil? Is there a limitation?
That's a very good question. Actually, I'm sorry I didn't mention this before. So we applied biochar at the beginning of the project. So this means that doing this application once, after 5 years, you have your oil production that inherits from the greenhouse gas, let's say, savings done at the first year. So this is very different from fertilizer. Biochar is a soil amendment. Fertilizer you should apply every year. A soil amendment like biochar, which is recalcitrant carbon, as I think will be explained in detail by Ahmed Sanei in another presentation. So it's a, let's say, persistent form of carbon in soil for more than 100 years. Yeah. So this is what makes it also interesting. You can do the job once and get your greenhouse gas savings for a number of years.
Thank you. Thank you, Tommaso.
Thanks very much for this opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have one last presentation that was not primarily announced on the program. So we have David Lessin from Ecutech, who will talk about SAF from lignocellulosic biomass, I think. No?
Yeah, gasification and Fischer-Tropsch. Thank you very much. Désolé, je vais faire la présentation en français, parce que c'était prévu, mais j'aurais pu la faire en anglais. Par contre, j'ai pas de... Compact GTL, machin. Ouais, écoutez. Merci. Donc je suis David Lessin, je suis directeur général d'Ecutech France et je viens vous faire plutôt une annonce qu'une présentation très scientifique. L'idée, c'est qu'on a annoncé au marché la semaine dernière une collaboration avec une société qui s'appelle Compact GTL et qui est spécialisée dans les technologies de Fischer-Tropsch modulaire. Et je vais vous expliquer pourquoi. Donc l'idée, c'est qu'on a effectivement, on va lier la gasification et le Fischer-Tropsch pour produire du syncrude qui après pourra être raffiné dans une raffinerie normale ou alors une raffinerie dédiée. Donc l'idée, c'est de départ, c'est vraiment, on a deux technologies de TRL neufs, en tout cas pour la biomasse, que ce soit du côté d'Ecutech et du côté de Compact GTL. Et essayer de faire presque 18. Donc on va tester d'abord, on va préparer un pilote et le tester dans notre laboratoire qui est basé à Épinal, qu'on a avec l'Université de Lorraine et l'INRAE. Et après, en même temps, on va préparer une application au Royaume-Uni pour une usine de référence qui pourra après être déployée sur dans d'autres endroits dans le monde. Je ne vais pas revenir sur les statistiques, sur les biocarburants, parce que je pense que mes prédécesseurs l'ont parfaitement fait. Alors, je vais vous présenter quand même Ecutech en 2 mots. Donc, on est une société qui est spécialisée dans la gasification. On est coté à la Bourse de Londres et on aime bien convertir tout type de déchets en gaz de synthèse. C'est une technologie qui est brevetée, qui adresse 2 principaux problèmes d'aujourd'hui. L'augmentation du volume de déchets et également le besoin d'énergie nouvelle. On est très établi en France. On peut dire, on est leader sur notre marché en France en gasification, avec d'autres applications, notamment en cogénération, et je vais revenir, et biométhane de synthèse. Mais voilà, on a des usines de référence en Italie, en Espagne. On en développe ailleurs, et je vais vous montrer notre pipeline. Juste pour dire, on a plus de 120 000 heures de fonctionnement industriel, essentiellement sur une usine basée en Espagne. L'idée, c'est qu'on bosse effectivement avec plusieurs types de partenaires et avec plein de configurations différentes, pas que pour faire évidemment des biocarburants, mais pour faire d'autres applications que je vais expliquer dans un instant. 2 mots sur notre brevet, enfin sur nos brevets, pardon. Donc l'idée, c'est de pouvoir faire une gasification, et je ne dis pas pyrogasification, parce que nous, on aime bien dire ce qu'on fait. Donc on travaille en lit fluidisé dense, qui permet de pouvoir traiter plein de types d'intrants. On a testé à ce jour plus d'une 60aine de types d'intrants. Et on va, alors pour le cas du SAF, je vais vous parler, on va faire une gasification sous oxygène-vapeur qui va nous permettre d'avoir un syngaz qui n'est pas dilué dans l'azote et qui après, donc ça c'est le premier brevet, on a un brevet pour tout ce qui est effectivement gasification et notre réacteur de gasification. Ensuite on a un second brevet qui est ce qu'on appelle chez nous le filtrage à chaud. Et qui est composé d'un cyclone, un craqueur thermique et des filtres en céramique. Et enfin, pour venir abattre les goudrons, on a un filtrage à froid. On vient saturer le gaz essentiellement en eau et on va pouvoir donc comme ça réduire les polluants hydrosolubles. Et enfin, on a un syngaz qui est pur, qui peut être utilisé alors, en cogénération. Et dans ce cas-là, l'agent oxydant, c'est effectivement plutôt de l'air. Mais on peut effectivement faire des biocarburants, comme on l'a dit, du méthane de synthèse et de l'hydrogène si on ne fait qu'une séparation de la fraction hydrogène. Quelques mots sur nos références, parce qu'on a parmi les meilleurs track records en Europe là-dessus. Donc effectivement, on a une usine qui gazifie du grillon d'olive et des résidus de l'exploitation viticole en Espagne, qui produit 5,9 MW électriques et 6,6 thermiques. Et elle marche depuis 2011 à plus de entre 7000 et 8000 heures par an, ce qui est une grosse référence en France, en Europe. On a également une unité de recherche en Lorraine. Alors, ce n'est pas à Nancy, c'est à Épinal, c'est une petite coquille. On a une autre unité qui est basée à l'université d'Extremadure en Espagne. Là, on a testé d'autres types de Fischer-Tropsch. Et enfin, on a une seconde unité industrielle opérationnelle qu'on vient de mettre en marche l'année dernière et qui est basée à Galina, qui est en Italie. Voilà. Et on a un beau pipeline en Europe. Alors tout ça, c'est un peu pour de la cogé. Donc on a un pipeline donc, en Croatie, en Bulgarie, en Californie également. On a un pipeline pour faire de la cogénération et en Grèce. Et enfin, on a racheté il y a cela 2 ans la plus grosse centrale de gasification en France qui s'appelait Sinov Déchets. On l'a racheté en liquidation et est en train de la remettre en marche. On finit les études d'ingénierie et la construction devrait commencer avant l'été. Et on fait ça avec le groupe IDEX, voilà, qui est bien connu, tout ce qui est réseau de chaleur, etc. Enfin, on adresse le marché du biométhane de synthèse. On est très bien positionné avec un projet qui s'appelle Biogaz Gardanne, qui est le plus gros, avec Salamandre d'Engie, qui est le plus gros projet d'unité de production de méthane, de biométhane en France. On a gagné un appel d'offres également avec IDEX pour encore du biométhane de synthèse et on développe avec le groupe EPH Gaz et l'Énergie un projet à Mont-Soleil-Mines sur une ancienne centrale à charbon. Quelques mots de notre partenaire, donc c'est Compact GTL. C'est une technologie qui émane de l'autorité atomique anglaise, l'équivalent du CEA, et qui a été testée pendant pas mal de temps. Elle a été reprise par donc Compact GTL en 2014. Et en fait, la vraie force de Compact GTL, c'est qu'au départ, c'était une technologie donc, de Fischer-Tropsch qui prenait les gaz d'extraction et qui les valorisait sur des plateformes pétrolières. Et ils ont testé la technologie avec Petrobras au Brésil pendant plus de 3 ans. Et donc, ils ont atteint un TRL 9 sur cette expérience. L'idée donc de notre partenariat, c'est d'être très concret, de pouvoir développer vraiment un projet immédiatement. Donc on a créé une co-entreprise. On est en train de faire les études d'ingénierie pour le démonstrateur qu'on va positionner en Lorraine. Et puis en même temps, on va commencer le développement de notre usine de référence pour qu'on arrive, disons, dans 3 ans, à avoir une usine de référence qui puisse tourner et montrer qu'on est capable, en fait, d'imbriquer nos technologies, parce que c'est un peu ça le secret. L'idée juste, et c'est probablement la seule slide qui mérite le coup, c'est que, disons, que je vous ai montré effectivement ce que c'était que notre technologie et le moyen d'épuration. Le vrai sujet, et ce sur quoi on a vraiment travaillé, c'est sur l'interface entre les catalyseurs Fischer-Tropsch utilisés par Compact GTL et le syngas qui arrive des Quitek. Et pour ça, on a toute une étape de syngas polishing qui a été travaillée avec Clariant pour effectivement pouvoir avoir un syngas qui n'abîme pas les catalyseurs de Compact GTL. Et après, l'idée, c'est effectivement de produire du syncrude qui peut être distillé probablement ailleurs alors dans un premier temps et après ailleurs. Donc là, c'est les taux de conversion. C'est vraiment un début. Ils vont être améliorés, évidemment. Donc on a 6,25 tonnes. Ça, c'est pour l'usine de référence. 6,25 tonnes de déchets résidus, alors avec un peu plus ou moins de biomasse, évidemment, dedans, pour respecter RED 2, RED 3. On produit 7100 normomètres cubes de syngas en sortie du process d'Equitech. Et en sortie du process Compact GTL, on a un peu moins d'une tonne de syncrude qui lui-même va être distillé et produire donc presque 400 kilos de SAF. Et après, évidemment, en fonction de l'étage de la colonne, vous avez du diesel, vous avez du naphtha. Voilà. Et l'idée, et je m'arrêterai là, puisque c'est un peu la fin de ma présentation, c'est que, en fait, sur le marché de la gasification pour produire donc, du SAF, on se retrouve avec des énormes installations qui demandent aussi souvent de la biomasse propre et souvent une étape de torréfaction qui impose des schémas d'approvisionnement qui peuvent être déstabilisants, en tout cas en Europe. Nous, on pense qu'il y a 2 modèles possibles. Un modèle où on fait plein de petites unités et on a une grosse on a une bioraffinerie qui vient collecter l'ensemble du syncrude, ou alors effectivement on peut avoir la biomasse qui vient, la biomasse ou les déchets qui arrivent sur une unité qui est plus grande et qui sera composée de plusieurs lignes de Equitech plus Compact GTL. Et comme ça, on pourra effectivement avoir des économies d'échelle. C'est les 2 modèles qu'on essaie de tester aujourd'hui. Et d'abord, ce qu'il faut qu'on fasse, d'abord, c'est tester effectivement nos 2 technologies sur le pilote. Voilà, c'est à peu près tout ce que j'ai à vous dire aujourd'hui. Merci.
Merci, David. So, do you have any questions?
Bonjour, Jean-Luc Bergnou, Johnson Matthey. Je voulais savoir, en fait, vous parlez en fait de transporter le FT crude. D'accord. Comment?
Alors aujourd'hui, je ne peux pas vous répondre à cette question, mais c'est effectivement, ça peut être une des choses envisagées.
Parce que est-ce que vous, je veux dire, il y a 2 possibilités, soit sous forme liquide, soit sous forme solide.
Ouais, ce serait plutôt sous forme liquide.
Donc il faut chauffer alors.
Peut-être, oui.
Ah, forcément, c'est des paraffines,
ouais.
Comment dire, donc... D'accord, ok. Non, parce qu'en fait, votre idée est basée en fait sur le transport du FT crude, et justement, aujourd'hui, on a, je dirais, un petit souci là-dessus. Enfin, c'est pas encore complètement établi, quoi.
Alors, pour être très honnête, le vrai sujet pour nous, c'est pas démontrer la fin du process, mais le début. Et donc, c'est l'interface entre des intrants qui peuvent être compliqués à gazifier et de produire un syngas de qualité pour ne pas abîmer les catalyseurs de notre partenaire. Le reste, on verra plus tard, objectivement. C'est vraiment ça le sujet. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, gazifier du CSR Pour faire du syncrude, si on arrive à faire ça, je pense qu'on est pas mal. Voilà. Et notamment parce que le CSR génère un gate fee. Donc dans les economics d'un projet comme ça, ça peut être parfaitement intéressant. Voilà.
Okay. D'autres questions?
Oui, merci. En termes de première réalisation industrielle, on a vu la taille que vous cibliez. En termes d'investissement, ça représente quelque chose de déjà très important?
Alors, je ne sais pas ce qui est important. Sur ce marché, c'est à mon avis très petit. On est autour de 60 millions pour la première plan de référence. Voilà. Ce qui est pour nous une taille en gasification, enfin c'est un peu moitié-moitié dans la répartition du coût.
D'autres questions? Other questions maybe? No? Yeah.
Et je vous fais juste revenir sur les intrants. Quand vous avez parlé de CSR, c'est du déchet municipal, du coup, vous allez adresser, ou c'est quel type de feedstock?
On va tester un peu tout. L'idée, c'est quand même qu'il y ait une fraction biogénique qui soit assez importante pour pouvoir respecter RED 2, RED 3.
D'accord. Oui, en parlant de ça, est-ce qu'il y a une limite bien précise en termes de teneur de produits biogéniques, ou on se base sur quels critères pour...
Alors, je ne suis pas un grand spécialiste des réglementations RED 2, RED 3. Ce que je sais, c'est que, et c'est encore en discussion, parce qu'il y a aussi des effets d'abattement des gaz à effet de serre, etc. Mais l'idée, c'est que ça va être plutôt localement, puisqu'il faut démontrer, c'est vraiment localement qu'il faut démontrer les abattements. Donc, on travaille là-dessus.
D'accord, très bien. Okay, now, merci David, thank you. So, vous pouvez rester. Now, I just invite all the speakers to the stage, so to answer maybe some remaining questions of the audience. Okay. Any questions? No. Maybe I will ask you a question. Feel free to answer. Do you think that we are gonna reach the limits or the amounts of sustainable aviation fuels that are pledged and announced globally and in Europe?
I think it would be pretty much very difficult. I think everybody proved that, for example, the issue is really, I think, the CO2, the biogenic CO2 and its availability. And that will be key. So at the moment, it's not I would say it's not the hydrogen, it's not necessarily the electricity if we go to the E route, but it's mainly the availability of a biogenic CO2 close to the future plants, I think. I mean, obviously, there's other routes in terms of creating and producing SAF or biofuel, but for my side, it's going to be the main issue.
Yes, I also believe that it's a bit, I don't want to say difficult, but yeah, we have a long way to reach the fuels based on the mandates, and we need a lot of electricity from winds and solar for the e-fuels, and also to combine them with biofuels. There is not, I mean, there is plenty of lignocellulosic biomass, but still, more like a lot of waste gases have to be utilized. It's a long way.
Yeah. I think from a technical point of view, it is feasible, but it has to be anticipated. The public authority must right now anticipate the need for biomass mobilization, for CO2 mobilization, and also for power. Because if you want to just talk about e-fuel production, you will need dozens of terawatt-hour of low carbon power. And we need to identify this need in European and at the level of each national public policy. And if the European actors are not ready to scale up their production at the level required by the European regulatory framework, the last option will be to import biofuel and e-fuel. That won't be a good news for European energy independence, but that will be an option. If I can give you a key figure on e-fuel production project for the world, currently there are around 75 projects in the world with a capacity of more than 200,000 tons of oil equivalent. So many countries in the world are currently ready to produce e-fuel to export their production to Europe. And I guess we can also identify some urgent mission regarding exportation of biofuel to Europe and North America.
Okay, thank you. You have some?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very challenging to do it. There's only so much biomass out there. Sometimes it's like a politician when they say they get this tax revenue in. They say they're going to spend it on a dozen different things. And there really is only enough money for one thing. And with biomass, you can burn it, you can make biomaterials, you can make chemicals, you can also make SAF. And I think it's important not to be ideological about numbers, but what gives the greatest impact in terms of the bioeconomy and the economy itself without damaging people's livelihoods. So it's a challenging thing, and numbers shouldn't be fixed upon. They need to be looked in a wider context.
Yeah, I think to make things happen really at scale by 2030, Europe will need to soften a little bit the requirements and the resources. For now, it's a strict second generation picture. While in the US, it's much more flexible. They can use first generation. And so I think Europe will have to follow a little bit what is done in the US and accept to put some first generation feedstocks in the pot for the first years at least.
Yes, I think, well, if we refer, for example, to the graph from Sky Energy that was presented, you could see that the HEFA production would not increase. But that's, of course, because of the lack of feedstock, because there is only so much waste lipids that we are able to collect. Actually, there is a huge difference between, let's say, domestic waste lipids, which are currently an untapped resource. So that's for waste lipids. From my experience in this BioForA project, I think there is also an untapped resource in marginal land utilization. There is a huge amount of land that can be correctly used without competing for food and without competing for land use change. This could also be in the current technological pathway that we have, something that should be more investigated, especially if you use carbon negative amendments like biochar.
Okay. I have another question about how do you see the infrastructure or the logistics of SAF production and distribution? Would we go more for smaller airports close to the production sites, or we'll continue with increasing hubs? And how to do with the transportation of SAF to the units? I don't know if any of you have some. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. What we see from Equitech. So I presented this GV with Compact GTL. We have obviously other GV that will come up probably within the next 6 months. And what we see, so if we're talking about the final product, then on one of our projects, a train is the main transportation. The other one is obviously the network of piping that is already there. So the idea is to be either close to the airport, but if not, close to a point where we could inject the product in the pipe.
I will talk only about ESAF. I don't know about biokerosene. But when we discuss with project developer, we realize that the transportation of their final products is not their main issue. They have many issues. Transportation is not one of them. They will find a solution, maybe not the most green one. They can transport their product by train or use trucks, even if it's not the best option. But they will have option, and as you say, they can also use existing infrastructures. I will say that regarding construction of infrastructure, the main issue will be how to transport CO2 and hydrogen, and of course how you transport biomass if you want to produce biokerosene.
Thank you.
One of the big questions for the large airports is the ability to put the fuel in the pipelines. And so the question is, can we put the SAF in the pipeline if it is ASTM certified? And the answer is no, it's not sufficient, because the pipelines are operated by the NATO in France, and so the military have their word on this. And so even if it is approved by the civil aviation, the military first need to say that this SAF component is agreed for their Rafale or for their F-16. And so this question about the transportability of SAF components through the NATO pipes are on the table, and some solutions are expected for the next years to come.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, I'm not an expert in these topics, but during the project, we collaborating with Sky Energy and ENI, we had some insights on the problems that may arise in logistics and transport of HEFA. Actually, I confirmed that you can, in fact, you can use the pipeline only if the militaries are okay, which I don't expect it to be the case many times. We arrange transport through boat, because actually you don't have to go to the airport, you have to go to the blending site first. So in that case was Rotterdam blending site. And from there you inject it in the pipelines that go to the airport. So I think, I think at least from the LCA evaluation that we did on this in the project, the transportation is not really a big issue in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, for one. And I think at least for big groups like ENI, which have all the past experience on transport of fossil, it's not a big issue either in terms of economics compared to fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Maybe they should also consider regulation issues on where if they will put the SAF like close to the airport or away, yeah, like regulatory implications.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any question that you want to, or any statement you want to share at the end of this session? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the audience also. And,